there, I'm Ginger, a holistic nutritionist, and I'm here today to talk to you about insulin resistance, what it is, how it happens, and what you can do about it. It is said that as many as 88% of American adults is walking around with insulin resistance, and most people aren't even aware of it. This is concerning because it leads to things such as weight gain, type 2 diabetes, and many other chronic health conditions. But here's the good news. Because it is a condition of diet and lifestyle, it's often reversible. Insulin is a hormone that is secreted by the pancreas when we eat. Processed carbs and sugar have the biggest impact. Though insulin has many jobs, it is most known for regulating our blood sugar level. When we eat foods that increase our blood sugar, the pancreas releases insulin, which then opens the doors that moves glucose from the blood to different parts of the body, such as the heart, the brain, muscles, fat tissue. Insulin is a unique hormone in that it affects every single cell in every tissue of the body, and this means that it can affect every single organ in the body. The way it affects the organ is going to be different depending on the organ that we're talking about. So an example would be when insulin binds to a cell in the liver creates fat. When insulin binds to a cell in the muscles, it's going to create new proteins. So from head to toe, insulin is regulating how your cells use your energy, and it can even determine whether a cell will live or die. When we eat a diet that is high in sugar and processed foods, and when we eat too often, our blood sugar level spikes throughout the day. This causes our pancreas to release insulin every single time it spikes. Over time, our cells develop a resistance to insulin, and they stop responding. This is one of the ways that insulin resistance can happen. And since every cell in the body responds to insulin, every organ in the body can become insulin resistant. When the body begins to become resistant to insulin, normal amounts are not sufficient to get the glucose into the cells. So the body produces more and more insulin to try to force those cells open. This is a vicious cycle and causes the body to become more and more resistant to insulin. As I mentioned, one of the main goals of insulin is to regulate our blood sugar. High glucose levels in the body are dangerous, so our body needs that insulin to get the glucose out of our blood and into the cells to lower blood sugar levels back to baseline. When the cells become resistant to the insulin, and insulin resistance has taken hold, this process is compromised and leads to a state called hyperglycemia. This is when a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is given. Here's a little secret that most people aren't aware of. Insulin resistance can be present for years, even decades, before a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is given. People can actually have normal blood sugar levels and still be insulin resistant. The reason so many people are not aware of this is because the standard blood tests only look at glucose and they very rarely look at insulin levels. Now remember, insulin is affecting every single organ in the body because it affects every cell in the body. So too much insulin circulating in your system leaves you susceptible to many serious chronic health conditions beyond just type 2 diabetes. Things such as heart disease, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, and even certain types of cancer. Okay, now I'm going to share some common signs that you can look for to see if you are insulin resistant. Number 1, are you someone who is hungry all the time? Do you eat a meal and finish and just want to continue eating? This is because your blood sugar is not being regulated properly. So you've got all that energy that's circulating around in your blood, but your body has no way to actually use it. This leads to the second symptom, which is similar to the first, and that is having cravings. If you often crave sugar and other carbohydrates, this is because your cells can't access the glucose it needs for the energy. So you eat, you create the glucose, the energy is there, but your body has no way to access it. Okay, number 3 is fatigue after meals. Do you feel like you want to take a nap after you eat? This often happens at lunchtime after a sandwich or a bowl of pasta. The reason the fatigue is because these high-carb meals cause the blood sugar to spike, and this leads to the rush of insulin. Because your cells are resistant to that insulin, The glucose can't make its way into the cells to be used as energy. This leaves you feeling exhausted and ready to lay down and take a nap. Okay, number 5 is weight gain in the midsection. One of the ways that the body can store fats is around the organs. This is called visceral fat, and it's always a sign of insulin resistance. The fat is typically hard. You can't pinch it. It's often called a beer belly. If you have a belly and you lay down on your back and the belly doesn't fall flat, that's likely visceral fat. One more sign of visceral fat is if your waist is bigger around than your hips. Okay, number 6 is retaining water. Insulin tells the kidneys to hold on to water and sodium. When this happens, swelling and bloating occurs. It is often most noticeable around the ankles. Number 7, needing to urinate all the time. This can also be a sign of insulin resistance. Because insulin is not able to regulate glucose, the body has to get rid of it somehow. So it signals the kidneys to create more urine to pass the urine from the blood. And this leads to symptom number 8, and that is frequent thirst. If you're peeing all the time, you're flushing all that water out, and that's going to leave you thirsty. Okay, number 9 shows up on the skin, and that is skin tags. These can show up anywhere on the body, but are most common on the neck and in the armpits. Number 10 is also skin related, and that is dark patches. When there are high levels of insulin in the body, dark, dry patches of skin often appear, often in the folds like the neck, the groin, and the armpits. Number 11 only pertains to the ladies, and that is polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. This typically happens to women during their reproductive years and shows up as either infrequent or longer than normal menstrual periods. It causes the body to create excess male hormone levels, and it's one of the leading causes of infertility. Number 12 is elevated blood sugar levels. If you've got a blood glucometer, check your blood sugar level prior to eating a meal, and then check it again 2 hours after the meal. If blood sugar is regulated, your level should be back to baseline, the level it was prior to eating. If it's not, this is likely insulin resistance. Okay, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, because insulin resistance is largely due to diet, it is reversible with diet. So I'm going to leave you today with a couple changes that you can make that will have a big impact on reversing your insulin resistance. The first is going to be to cut back on the amount of carbs that you're eating. When we look at the 3 macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat, carbs have the biggest impact on raising blood sugar levels. Protein has a moderate impact, and fat has almost 0. So eating a diet that is low in carbohydrates and high in dietary fats will cause the least amount of increase to your blood sugar level. And this in turn means your body will not have to release as much insulin. Over time, with less insulin needed to respond to all the blood sugar, your cells will begin to gain sensitivity again. And this is when that resistance is reversed. So a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet are 2 great options for someone with insulin resistance. The second thing that can have a big impact is to restrict how often you're eating. Eating enough food to sustain yourself between meals will mean less snacking. Remember, every single time you eat, your blood sugar level goes up, resulting in a rush of insulin to take care of that blood sugar. So snacking keeps you on the blood sugar roller coaster throughout the entire day. The best way to prevent snacking is to eat meals with sufficient fat and protein to sustain yourself to the next meal. Another thing to consider is intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. A good place to start is going 16 hours between meals. An example would be to finish your last meal at 7 p.m. and then don't eat again until 11 a.m. the following day. If you're not eating, you're not releasing insulin. Diet is by far going to have the biggest impact on reversing insulin resistance, but there are 2 other lifestyle habits to focus on that can also make a big difference. The first is to get daily exercise. Both aerobic and anaerobic will help. The key here is going to be consistency. The last thing I'll mention is to focus on prioritizing sleep. Getting enough quality sleep will help stabilize blood sugar and increase insulin sensitivity. And when we're more rested, we tend to make better food choices. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like, and I will see you next time.